Hello, my name is Nigel Blake, and with the aid of a few slides here, what I'm looking to do is just with a step-by-step process walk you through the reasons why it makes sense to clean, repair, apply coatings and basically look after your existing tarmac. So just a few examples here of what can be achieved with a little bit of investment, a little bit of time and some money on some materials. Here are products for the tarmac come in a variety of finishes. We're featuring some driveways and some walkways here, but also the products can be used on various sports surfaces and are available in a wide range of colour. Great example here. You can see the picture on the left here showing a kind of before and after combined into one, and really the condition of the driveway on this side is perfect for the perfect time for it to be treated and then protected with the product. It's not in too bad condition, but as you can see, deterioration has certainly set in there, and it's the right time to protect the surface. Now, we're all very familiar with tarmac when it's new. It's full of resins, full of colour. When it gets very hot, it can start to soften, and then over time, really, it just dries out. And once it starts to dry out, various problems occur. We're all familiar with cracking, the loss of colour, the fretting of the stones coming loose, and as the surface becomes more vulnerable and more dry, then again problems with stains soaking into the surface, moss and algae building up, edges breaking away, and then sort of potholes developing as well. And really this is all down to the fact that the resins are being reduced, resins are being lost, and the protection element from the tarmac is reducing, and that's when it becomes vulnerable to deterioration. And really the product that the Tarmac product works on that very simple principle, just as we think about putting sort of oils and stains on our shed and fences every few years. The same principle, we're looking to put back in the goodness that the elements and wear and tear are taking out. And this product is not to be confused with a kind of what I would call a tarmac paint, a bitumen type paint, which is just sitting on the surface. Really it's like putting a plaster over an open wound. You're not actually healing the wound, or you're healing the damage underneath, you're just aesthetically covering it. With the Tarmac product, you are putting the goodness back into the tarmac, it's soaking into the tarmac, it's stopping that further deterioration and leaving the surface looking good. Now, certainly there's many types of tarmac out there, and you'll see many different, not only different types of tarmac, but of course many different conditions. So all these examples are actually, I only live in a small village, and within literally 150 meters of my home I could see half a dozen different finishes of tarmac. Now for our own product, you could say that this kind of surface here, this kind of surface here, to a lesser degree this one, are perfect. This is in the right condition, that really the colours beginning to fade in comparison with the newly laid tarmac here. A little bit of deterioration is beginning to set in, and that same principle really. We don't think of staining our shed or oiling our fence when it's falling apart. We think, yeah, every 2 years after the product has been exposed to the elements, that's the right time to keep on top of it, stop that deterioration. And the same thing with tarmac. Now if we look at this other example here, not only is it really dry, it's beginning to crack here, but it's worn to the point where there's very little tarmac, i.e. very little black or this kind of resin on the surface. It's really down to exposed aggregate. The aggregate in the actual mix, the wearing course has gone, exposing the aggregate, and really this is not the ideal surface, and certainly again here, for our product, because although our product will soak into and do a good job at helping to stop this deterioration, it's never going to be able to actually bond to these stones. This is just, if you can imagine the sort of aggregate that would be on the bottom of a fish tank, for example. Nothing can penetrate, nothing can actually key onto that surface. So your Tarmac Restorer, doesn't matter what product it is effectively going to slide off. So hopefully yours is not in this condition. Hopefully it's more like one of these two conditions, and then that's when you're going to stop the deterioration of the product and leave it looking as good as new and protected. So if we decide to move forward and do the work, we just need, same as any job really, the better the preparation, then the better the end result. And the great thing about maintaining, looking after, cleaning, treating your tarmac is that you don't need a tremendous amount of products, a tremendous amount of skill sets, and you can see here we're just featuring a few products. Pressure washer, certainly you would want to clean the surface down, but there's no need to go you don't need a professional £1,500, £1,200 machine necessarily, because you only want to be cleaning at a low pressure. You don't want to be dislodging any more stones than is necessary, so a relatively low pressure washer is adequate, but certainly pre-treatment is the key. If you've got moss or algae, it's certainly beneficial to kill those off, pre-treat a week or so before with a moss clear product, just to make the cleaning easier but also more effective. You don't want any live spores left on the surface after you've cleaned it. With the driveway cleaner, this is a great product really. If again, if you can imagine, let's say a 10-15-year-old tarmac driveway been exposed to a lot of vehicle use, there'd be residue off the tyres, residue off the engine exhaust, particles all building up on the surface, plus the everyday pollutants, and a quick application with the driveway cleaner an hour or so before you pressure wash will help to really break down all these pollutants, and when it comes to actually coating the surface, help the product penetrate, help the coating penetrate and bond properly to the tarmac itself. And then if you have any oil stains within the surface, again, makes sense to treat them, neutralize them, but make sure that you use oil remover that is specifically for tarmac, because if it's not specifically for tarmac, if it's for maybe block paving or concrete, it can be a little bit too aggressive for the tarmac itself, and actually can start to damage the tarmac further. So just be a little bit careful on that one. And then again, if your driveway needs a little bit of repair, it's generally quite a simple process, and as you can see from the examples left to right here, some great results can be achieved. You can see the area here. This was actually a job that I worked on myself. This area totally broken away, but with the application of some cold lay macadam there, and just the use of a hammer and bolster, what I did was actually sort of chip this area out, and then compacted some cold lay macadam, tamped it down with a block of wood and the club hammer there, and you can see we've got a nice repair there. But when it's combined with the coating, of course, it's never going to totally disappear or look as good as new, but customer here was very happy with the result. we had some cracks here, we had some fretting, sort of minor pothole here that again is easily repaired with the macadam. And then the repair compound, if we look at the next slide, you can see all I've done here is taken some of the repair compound, mixed it with a little bit of the coating product into a paste, and then with a trowel worked it into the joint here, and actually just to and again just tamped it down, just smoothed it down, and then just to do the best job possible, some of the stones that had fretted from the surface while the repair compound was still wet, I just gently rolled these into the surface just to create the texture wise the most effective repair possible. A very straightforward process. And so, you know, once we've achieved that, once we've cleaned down the area, once we've done as much repair as possible, then we can consider the actual coating itself. You can see here this was a sort of shared driveway. There was, you know, there was some cracking occurring here, but it was quite negligible, very fine really, and the decision was made that you know, if the coating was soaked into the surface, that would stop the further deterioration, and that was about the best job possible in the circumstances here. And you can see here, I think this was sort of 15-20 years old, quite a lot of aggregate showing through the surface there, so certainly the treatment was long overdue, but again, you know, a nice result. People were very, very happy. So before you look at you know, the coating part of your job, consider a few things pointed out there. Overall condition. So again, on this on these two areas here, over time, you know, a certain amount of this aggregate will start to show through again, because the product can't really bond to that, but the goodness would have soaked into the tarmac and stopped any further deterioration or the further expansion of these cracks occurring. So look at the overall condition. Coverage per square meter, now normally, or almost certainly, you'd be looking at sort of 2 coats of the product, and generally I would expect on this kind of condition, pretty poor condition, the coverage to be in the region of you know, maybe around sort of 50 square meters for a 20 litre tub. But once your first coat is down, then the second coat could easily go 60, 70, maybe 80 square meters. So it's all dependent on condition, but certainly always make sure you've got enough material to do the job properly. Keep an eye on the weather. Basically, the surface needs to be dry. Now I think this job, we did this job in the sort of summer months, cleaned it one day, left it a day to dry properly, and then the following day it was absolutely fine. Sometimes, you know, you could be clean one day and just coat it the next, but certainly it needs to be dry. And then application tools to do the job, pretty straightforward. So can see here, yeah, this is actually the same job. You can see these cracks that had occurred, but again, the customer wasn't overly concerned. You know, these are relatively fine. They're not really big enough to use too much of the compound, but he wanted the property to look nice and to stop the further deterioration, and certainly we achieved that. You can see the application here is by a roller and a tray, and just to avoid any anything going up the side of the walls and that, we'd always recommend maybe around the edges working with a paintbrush, and then going with the roller from there. Very simple application, no real skill sets required there, but a key thing is always keep mixing the material. So the material comes in very handy jerry cans, very easy to shake up, and the one tip here, between each time that you pour some liquid into your roller tray, just make sure you give it a thorough shake each time before applying the material. Excuse me. So again, some further before and after shots here. A very good result on this one. Actually, the customer did pay a little bit extra. We repaired all the cracks. He thought that that was a worthwhile exercise there, and again was delighted with the result. Same thing once more. You can see these areas where the tarmac had become very dry, that moss had very much started to establish itself. The whole thing looked, the whole area looked very tired. But once you've done the job, again, you have to accept none of these things last forever, but certainly you do get a very good lifespan with this product. But if you're prepared, maybe, you know, once or twice a year, just to help the product a little bit. For example, this area, you know, was very prevalent of moss and algae before we did the job. Never really saw any sun, lots of overhanging foliage, area stayed damp all the time. So even though the protection is back in there with the Tarmac Restorer, it makes sense maybe a couple of times a year just to dilute down with in a watering can some of this moss clear product, and just put it on with a watering can and let nature do the rest. We're highlighting a hose here just because you don't need to pressure wash the surface, but just again maybe an occasional light rinse off just to stop those spores getting back into the tarmac in vulnerable areas is a good exercise. But ultimately, a top-up coat of the product, maybe every 3 years, maybe every 5 years, dependent on wear and tear, and then you're not going to suffer that situation where, you know, going back a couple of slides there, where the area gets to this kind of look, and really where it's generally looking, letting down the whole property. So, as I say, just some very straightforward aftercare of the tarmac. If you don't do it, no problem. It just might mean that rather than a top-up coat every 3 years, every 5 years, you might find that the period of time lessens before you feel it needs a proper rinse down and a top-up coat of tarmac. But whatever you decide to do in that respect, certainly, you know, the product's going to look better and last a lot longer than it would if it was just left without any kind of upkeep whatsoever. So hopefully, you know, there's been some good information there. Again, certainly check out the short, literally 2.5 minute video that takes you through in a little bit more, a little different way, the processes in a visual way of how to clean and protect and how to apply the products from there. But thanks for watching, and if we can be of any assistance, you can see our contact details on the top of the screen there. We're always here to help. Thank you very much.